All right. Welcome, Anthony Bucci. Is that your home office?
I take us off live. I'm just kidding.
Is that your home office?
What's up, Chris?
How are you?
It is. I am in my home office in suburbs of Philadelphia today.
Yeah. And what's that delicious looking gear you got behind you? You're a skateboarder?
Oh my gosh, I'm a skateboarder. Ask my wife. I'm a hobby guy. So that I don't know if I ever found a hobby I didn't like. So I'm a guitar player. I'm a skateboarder. Things with engines. Yeah, it's we're all fighting hard to make our Zoom and Skype backgrounds better these days without actually having to use the artificial, background that just everybody does Tiger King. Everybody's been
I hate those artificial backgrounds. Yeah. So that's quite an interesting looking guitar. We already have a question. What is that guitar?
So that's a Strat, right? So that's a red. What would you call it? A Mexa Strat, right? So it's not even an American Fender Stratocaster. That's one that I picked up actually for my daughter to learn on. But if you want to talk guitars for a second, I'll show you my baby that lives over there. It doesn't live over here.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're a motorcycle guy, and people are going to ask about. We know you're a gearhead, and so people are going to ask. I want to see you swing your laptop around in the room and see what kind of goodies you got. The first guitar.
Yeah. So this is my guitar. So that's a 2001 R7 reissue. I want to say it's like a 57 or a 53 reissue. I think it's a 57 reissue. And that's my Les Paul. So when I'm annoying my wife always says, she's like, every day we have a concert in the house that no one bought a ticket for. It's usually that plugged into a Marshall.
That's funny.
I play a lot of blues, a lot of Guns N' Roses and classic rock. So
that's fun. Awesome. Can you swing your laptop around and show us some motorcycle gear? Make us all jealous.
Man. All right. So my office, I'll tell you this. So it's funny. After a little bit of a break, we're going to talk about it a little bit, but I'm in like startup mode right now. So my office is destroyed because I've been using it as a makeshift studio / war room with some of the nonprofit stuff that we're doing right now. But I will swing you around. It's a little bit dark, and you're going to see that I have a ring light right in front of my desk because I'm on Zoom so much. I've been doing video. Yeah. So if I swing around, you're going to see, well, I'll start with the edge of my desk, right? So I have my favorite GP racer of all time was Marco Simoncelli. I met Marco on the Italian Legendary Tour with Dainese in 2011. So he signed one of his helmets for me. You immediately go, I've got Rossi right in the middle, my old RevZilla license plate. And then up there, I've got so that helmet's Fogarty, Agostini, and Lucanelli. I've got Nicky Hayden on that Arai. That's another Rossi. That's the one where it's his face. I've got the classic Sun and Moons or the classic Dream there. And then I have a Batista. And then up in the top left, I've got a Shark. What do they call that helmet? I'm blanking because they changed the name on me. But it's the Shark ninja looking helmet from like 5 or 6 years ago. And they actually put my name on the side of it, which was super cool. Oh, but yeah, I'll give you one more too. Hold on. I'll give you my wife says this is, why are you a hoarder? I'm a hoarder. So I've got, right. So when we did our essentially merger with Cycle Gear, so we had like kind of that's the Ducati in the background. I built that GS with my daughter recently. So this is kind of a cool one, right? If I'm in storytelling mode. So for my favorite leadership quote is that David Ogilvy of Ogilvy and Mather, the famed ad man, and he said, or it's one of my favorite leadership, and he said, if we build a company, if we hire people shorter than ourselves, we'll build a company of dwarfs. If we hire people taller than ourselves, we'll build a company of giants. So what I used to do, and somebody either he did this or somebody took this, he used to give a Russian nesting doll, which it shows like, this was a metaphor that you could put on your desk. And what I actually did was, this is in the last couple of years of RevZilla, so this would have been like 15 or 16. I reached out on Etsy and I found somebody that made Russian nesting dolls, and then I had them do motorcycles on them. And then when we'd hire a new executive or hire a new manager, I'd give out the Russian nesting doll that one's a GS, one's a Harley, one's a Duck. What else am I looking at? What's a dirt bike? And I would tell that story, and I'd say, remember, the job is to hire the smartest people that you can and then get out of the way. The job is not to hire people shorter than yourself or less talented so that you can manage what they, you have to control what they do. It's funny. I could talk about stuff like that all day, but sorry, I'll come up for air here. I know that we're kind of all over the place in the first couple of minutes here.
Well, that's all right. And, speaking, I've heard that you're a legendary storyteller, so I'm going to try to draw that out. But
also known as I don't shut up. That was very kind. Whoever told you that.
I've been spying on you a little bit through guys who work for you, like Spurgeon and I, and your camera guy were off in Morocco for 4 days writing together for the Triumph announcement. That was first week of February.
So
it was awesome.
Which camera guy would it have been? So recent, not a couple of years ago. Yeah,
just a couple of months ago. Great guy. I'm blanking on his name. I had his name until we went live. And he had some pretty nice equipment. In fact, his camera guy and our camera guy, I rented a van, and you guys paid for the gas. And the two of them went around and filmed. And then they had a 2-camera shoot because you had a high-end Sony and we had a fairly high-end Sony, and it worked out. We compared footage and shared footage and everything else with the GoPros. It was great. So
that's awesome. I love that you got to go on the ride. I'm very jealous. It sounds amazing.
It was amazing because Triumph did this big announcement, and it was in Marrakesh, in Morocco, where there's some great riding, and they brought in all kinds of people, really good riders, like Lee Morrison, the stunt director for the Bond film. He has 32 film credits for being the stunt rider for Jason Bourne and James Bond and Angelina Jolie, Harrison Ford. So he led our ride the first day. It was amazing. So I got to interview him. He was as good a storyteller as you are, which is saying a lot. So you said on your blog you've kind of redlined lately, and it's a good kind of tired. You got 5 kids, and you guys have been doing some charitable stuff we're going to talk about towards the end. But
sure,
it's really nice of you to make some time here. I was going to ask, what's it like to be a homeschooling dad now with the lockdown? But it sounds like you got it worked out.
If you ask my wife that question, you get a very different response.
Oh, yeah.
So I lasted about a week. My wife is Tara. I lasted about a week, and I have 5 kids, and I have an 11 and 7-year-old girls, and then the rest of them are 5 and under. So they're their own pack, right? But the older 2 have like homeschool every day, right? So the short of it, and we'll talk about it at the end, what I'm doing right now, or I'm about a month into, is I'm a big food guy, right? I'm a nerd, right? I get into all these different hobbies. So I like to cook, and I love like amazing food. And I was talking to one of my friends in Philadelphia who's a prominent restaurateur and just a good guy. I said, "How are you?" And he said, "I can't cry anymore." And he, after 20 years, had just laid off like 300 of the staff. Ugh. And I talked to my other buddy who was also another tech startup guy, right? I'm a tech startup guy. That's my background. And I said, we got to figure something out. We got to help. And so I'm working on this project right now called, that started as Save Philly Eats, but now we're calling it Save the Eats because we're in the process of rolling this out to other cities. Again, we don't have to go in those weeds now, but that's why I did a week of homeschool. My wife says, I support it. I know, part of our life is we try to give back and we do some nonprofit work. And she said, if you think that you can help the bars and restaurants of Philly and then beyond actually generate revenue while they're closed, she goes, go do it. And I'll wear the primary homeschooler hat. Now, Chris, I know you've done a few companies. Since I left RevZilla in the early part of 2017, I had not I remember it, but I hadn't experienced anything that was as heavy of a lift as startup speed, which is blinders all in. So right now it's, I'm starting my days 8-ish and I'm kind of leaving my office 10 p.m.-ish. And I don't want to sound like one of those people that's like, workaholic porn, or people say it's like, you have to do that, right? You hear some of the stuff Gary Vee says and it's like, all right, it's too much.
Yeah.
But like right now, it's when you're getting things off the ground, it's an endless stream of, I have a team of right now, I want to say 6 contractors and 12 volunteers, and we're working in 6 cities. Wow. And it's kind of wild. Yeah.
Well, time's of the essence right now too. So you don't have any to spare with restaurants collapsing Yeah, so that's hard. So let's talk about motorcycling for a minute. You were forbidden to motorcycle by your parents when you grew up.
You have good intel. I absolutely was. There were only two things that were forbidden: no tattoos and no motorcycle. I still don't have a tattoo, but at 26, the motorcycle happened.
a dark Ducati Monster, right?
2001 750 dark. It was carbureted. And that was great. I'm Italian. I like geeky stuff. I rode a couple dirt bikes growing up, but I was never allowed to have a street bike. And you know what? I'm going to say something really unpopular. Knowing the amount of times I've dumped bikes or been down and the amount of riding I've done, my kids need to be like mid-20s before they get a bike too. My dad used to say, I say, why can't I get a motorcycle? And he said, because I want to sleep at night. And he goes, if you had a motorcycle, because my father had a motorcycle in college, and I think he had it for a year or two. I think the story goes, it might have been either he dumped it or he came close to dumping it on like wet train tracks, right? Like of just like being a dumb college kid. And I hate to say dumb college kid, but being a young person going too fast. And he just said, I know what that's like. And, you know, when you're on your own someday and you're your own man and your own adult, and, you know, we know that you've launched and you don't need mom and I for any safety net and we have no say, then go buy a bike if you really want one. But so to me, I guess that timeline was till I was 26.
Well, you know, that makes a lot of sense. When I was a teenager, as soon as I got a license, I got a motorcycle. In fact, I was dirt biking before that, but I got a street bike. And those were the days of 350 two-strokes, and we'd put Cafe Racer clip-on handlebars on them and raise the pegs so we could scrape the hell out of them. And we'd ride on Skyline Boulevard in the San Francisco Bay Area at unbelievable speeds. There's one sweeping turn that I used to practice on all the time down by San Pablo Dam Reservoir. And I would take that turn at 120 miles an hour. I can't believe that bike would go 120, but it did by the time we souped them all up. And so, yeah, I don't know how I lived through it all. I look back on that and say, 16, 17, 18, I don't know why I lived. So, but anyway, so that's, and just a little bit more on your background, just so people know a little bit about you. You say you're technical. You went to Drexel and you majored in...
So I started comp sci, but I finished information systems. But I started writing code when I was about 15 or 16. So by the time I was 22, I knew I was not going to be, I'd worked with enough VPs of engineering and CTOs. Like I was a career nut really early. I think I was always in trouble for trying to monetize something, I think my whole life. And by the time I was 22, I realized that I wasn't going to be a CTO. And I said, I love the internet. I love consumer. And actually, you know, it's not surprising now, but like I enjoy people. And I said, how do you connect business and people and consumer together? And I realized that it's like, okay, after data structures, I was like, I'm out of comp sci. That was 3 years of that. Finished on more of a business and computer track at Drexel with 3 co-ops. And then I graduated and I went back to my first co-op job, which was at a web agency doing e-commerce platforms. And this would have been 2004. So that was like, yeah. So my start was I've been technical since I was 15.
So you had a technical background, so you could program a website with a couple of buddies, and you bought a motorcycle when you were 26. You were still single, and you wanted to buy some fancy gear to make you look cool, like black leathers or something like, I don't know what you were trying to buy, and you couldn't get them. That was the idea that started RevZilla?
It was. And how's our sound? Are we good? I'm getting a little clicking on my sound. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So you buy the bike and you're doing that work and you're figuring that out. And I had a friend that rode and I said, okay, so I've done a bunch of Googling. Why can't I buy a Dainese jacket? Why can't I buy online? I want to find, you know, the reference I always made was the Akrapovic exhaust, the carbon fiber Arai helmet. And back then there might not even be a carbon fiber one yet. But you're looking at these brands, right? The very special brands, the brands that you saw us focus on, and still focus on at RevZilla. And the original thesis for RevZilla was the Barneys of motorcycling is missing. And I was like, and I'm a new rider, right? So my background's technology, consumer brand, and we worked with Calvin Klein underwear, Speedo, Vineyard Vines. We built websites right before RevZilla for 3 years at this company. These are all these brands. And I'm looking at it, and no disrespect, to Bike Bandit, to Ride Gear, to Motorcycle Superstore. But we looked at what they were doing, and they were motorsport.com that took money from Sequoia Capital in '99. It's like wild to watch that, right? And we said, but the Barney's is missing. No one needs motorcycling. Again, Europe.
Do people remember what Barney's is, or do they probably remember Zappos is still going, right? Is Barney's still going?
So Barney's went, I think, chapter 7 bye-bye, like in the last 6 months. But high-end, experiential, focused on premium, focused on things that are exciting. Just like the stuff you see behind me or any of our bikes, none of us need motorcycles. So
I do.
But hold on. But the driver is joy, right? It's not on Maslow's hierarchy. The driver is, I want to spend the money that I earned on the thing that makes me happy. That is different than the thing I need. That is different than food. That's different than a toaster or baby wipes on Amazon. And what we thought in 2007 was that the market or the industry was really focused on kind of like discount, like a very Walmart approach, very needs-based approach, which has its place. But we said, there's a story to be told. Can we tell that story? So we started as new riders. We moved in together in July of 2007, and we launched the website November 14th of 2007. So 4 months later, I threw in $15,000. I went 1099 at my job. I moved my 2 friends in with me. They were also new riders. And we just said, this is really cool. We get to experience the sport as fresh eyes. And we have this idea that we're going to build the thing that we thought was missing because there wasn't the really cool place to go outside of a really cool store. And I'll tell you, too, in the Northeast, we have some great dealerships. But because it's seasonal and people are only riding 6, 7 months of the year, you just wouldn't find the quality of stores that you'd find in a San Francisco or in a New York or in a Southern California, right? You'd walk into like a Del Amo in Southern California or a Scud West in San Francisco, and you're just like, these are amazing experiences. We didn't have that in Philly. So that was what we said, our bet is, can we build some technology that allows us to build a different experience? And we were kind of off to the races.
Yeah,
and we weren't sure if it was going to work.
Oh, I think we have a photo of the 3 founders in there with their motorcycles to throw up. I don't think you'll be able to see this, Anthony, but you and I don't get to see the photos, but Paul controls them in the background. I gave him a bunch of photos before this interview.
I love your production value, by the way, that you have this. I wish I could see what can I go somewhere and mute it so I can see what it actually looks like, or I guess it'll be delayed, so it won't work.
I think it'll be delayed. And I tried to do that myself, but you're listening in one ear and out the other. It's a little bit crazy. So Spurgeon said you were quite influenced by Tony Hsieh's book from Zappos, Delivering Happiness.
Yeah. So we read Delivering Happiness, and I want to say 2009. And we pivoted the message from Barney's to, it was right when Zappos was blowing up. I mean, it was right around the time probably Amazon bought them for $1 billion. And there were just some light bulbs. We actually, I don't know if they still do. When I was there, every new employee we used to call it the bento box. They'd get a T-shirt, they get some swag, they get the Delivering Happiness book, and they get a few other things. And in that book, we learned that if you're really competing on delighting your customers, then you really need to own the end-to-end experience. You need to be consistent. You need to elevate the service level beyond expectation. And that's when we pivoted. You heard me say we started as, can we be Barney's and just be kind of like a higher end? And we really pivoted into, can you be the backstop for the industry, for a rider that wants to find someone and needs someone to rely on that will be consistent, keep their promise, and help them. And that is where the Zappos, it's funny, 13 years later, we weren't the Zappos of motorcycle gear, we were RevZilla. But back then, we're the Zappos of motorcycle gear.
So how did you get the idea? I see several questions here in the chat. How did you get the idea to leverage YouTube like you did?
So I loved it. This is a great story. So in 2009, we're now, call it 18 months into the company. So this would be spring of 2009, which is our second full spring. We're less than 2 years old. And people don't know this, but they're calling the phones. And at that time, 18 months into the company, we had 2 employees. And if you called, you still might talk to one of the 3 founders, including me, or one of our 2 employees. And we're in this like bombed out warehouse down in South Philadelphia that had no heat, right? We moved out of our apartment and we were so proud of it. And that's a whole story in itself. So you have customers calling you, they're riders, and they're saying, listen, the story I always tell is, guy calls in, I talk to him. Hey, my name's Chris. I live in the Pacific Northwest. I ride 230 days a year. I commute to work. Here's my riding position. I like the color yellow. I have about $500 to spend, and I run really hot, so I need a lot of ventilation. Can you recommend me the 3 jackets that'll work for everything I just described to you? So you're the human wizard, right? You're like somebody's coming to you and saying, you're the consultant. And what we would do, if I was talking to you, Chris, back then, is one of us would spend an hour with that customer, and we'd say, here's what we know. If we were spending our money, this is where value for dollar and solving the problems that you have for that application, this is what we would recommend. And at the end of that call, you would say, I can't believe you spent that much time with me. I can't believe you know that much about your product. This is unbelievable. Please don't ever stop doing that. And by the way, I'm going to tell all of my friends that you exist because I'm blown away. So here's where video comes in. That doesn't scale. So our thesis was, can you make 90% of that phone call self-serve? And can you have the conversation about, what is this product? How does it work? How would you use it? Why does it exist in the world? And what does it cost? So that Chris from the Pacific Northwest, if you live there, would call in. And this is literally a year later how the conversation changed. You would call back in and say, hey, listen, I watched a bunch of videos. I have it narrowed down to these 3. Can you help me with the nuance of making the decision? I'm not quite sure. Versus, can you start with 600 jackets and on this one call, focus it down?
Yeah. So why don't I don't know other retailers who really do that. Like when I go to buy a new jacket, I go up on RevZilla and there's this great video, 7 minutes long, which is all I need. Great video, and I can go from jacket to jacket. But I don't see that on Amazon. I don't see it. Zappos used to do that, right, with their shoes. But lately I've been shopping for a new pair of Nikes, and I didn't see it on any of the shoes.
So I'm curious that Zappos dropped it, and I'm surprised actually that they did, because I used to know the woman that ran video for Zappos, and they would shoot something like 10,000 videos a day, and their target was 30 seconds, right? Which is, here's how it fits, here's how it works, here's what it looks like, go buy it.
Which for me wasn't satisfying because it wasn't deep enough.
I mean, so there's considered and there's not considered, right? So you would never watch a 7-minute video on a brake pad unless it was a performance brake pad, or unless you really need to understand if that brake pad was fit. But when it comes to an enthusiast audience, right, it's specialty retail, which is the space that we play in with this motorcycle, the knowledge matters, and the style matters, and the safety matters, and the domain knowledge matters. So it mattered that we were riders, even that we were junior riders. We're still doing the work to figure out how all this stuff worked, because every rider was going to need to figure out if it would work for them. And that's I always call it the 10%, right? It's the 10% that the masses, it's the mass market, or the 10% that Amazon won't do. And that's the piece that's going to be knowledge-driven or editorial-driven. I mean, part of it is they're so big it might be diminishing returns, but part of it also is that they actually don't have the experience within the realm of the sport itself to be able to offer that texture, which is useful to a consumer. So that is, in essence, you know, RevZilla now, after we did our merger with Cycle Gear and now J&P, which I'm really proud of what they've done since my tenure, we have some private label brands, and they have to stand on their own 2 feet. But back then, before Cycle Gear, we didn't make anything. It was all third-party products. So if you looked at RevZilla and said, what is RevZilla? The brand of RevZilla is actually this umbrella of service and knowledge and trust that kind of envelops all the things a motorcyclist could buy, and then helps them in the fastest, time-efficient way possible find their way to the right stuff. And that was really the value we brought to the world.
Wow. So you make it all sound so serious sales technique, and you get the textures and the fabrics and all that kind of stuff. But I have a question here from on the chat, Super Funkomatic. That sounds like a great name. Can Anthony talk about how he adopted the Ron Popeil outlook and his big online personality? Thanks.
So unless they've taken them down, you could search for RevZilla Video 2009, and you should, on YouTube right now, be able to see the early videos where I stand behind a table that's too low with a coffee cup, and you can see my crotch and my fly. When I put a helmet in front of me, it's actually in front of my crotch. And it took us like 6 months of getting feedback of, can you just raise the table so I don't have to look at this guy's crotch, right? I'll remember that there's a guy, he's wonderful. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm definitely like a rah-rah guy. I definitely, I have it. Like I'm an emotional person. And I would say that, like, I shed tears when this person, I had a dinner for this guy, I'm going to name, his name's Nick Romolini. That was our first video guy at RevZilla. And he said, I love you. You've done so much. We've done so much together. You treated me so well, but I need to go make movies. I got to move to LA. So Nick lives in LA, and I still talk to Nick. But when he came on and we did those early videos, I'll never forget the day I showed up. And I went from, hi, this is Anthony. And today we're going to talk about this Arai Corsair RX-7 Corsair, which was the helmet back then. And when the first time I went, hey, this is Anthony. And he literally, like, behind the camera was like, what are you doing? And I said, I was watching this documentary on ESPN, and they said when you're watching it live, if you were in the studio, everything would seem way more exaggerated in person than it comes across in the camera. I think your viewership, or the people that watch my videos, would probably say, no. Like, it came through. You were exaggerated. But it was kind of like, if you're, we used to have this running joke, and I'm not going to write a book, so it's not going to be the title of the book. But like, the joke was, if we wrote the RevZilla book, if I did, from my perspective, the title of the book would be The Internet Rewards Speed and Yelling. Because it was always about, how can you do 220 words a minute, and how can you keep it amplified so that it engages someone and draws them in. But I mean, that was the Ron Popeil aspect. Was, he's the Showtime rotisserie guy, right? Ron Popeil, Billy Mays, the Slapshot guy to a lesser extent. I mean, when we started video, it was to try to scale the knowledge, but it was also to try to sell stuff. It was like, all right, we're this little tiny company. We raised no venture capital. We can barely pay ourselves a living wage. We got to sell more crap so we can keep the lights on. And so if we have any chance to grow this company. So it started out with, hey, this is this helmet and this is what it does, and it's awesome. And that was like maybe like a year. And then where it really found its stride was, you saw me develop as an on-screen. What we realized is that people needed the knowledge, but they actually, our original thesis, right? So I said this to my two partners. So like, do you want to do it? I'm like, well, I reached out to people I knew that have castings for QVC. And they're all really expensive. We don't know anybody else that can do this. So if people say, well, why is the guy from Jersey Shore selling me this motorcycle helmet? We'll just take them down. People hate them. We'll pull the plug. But what we responded to me, even with my unique mix of like yelling and looking all over. Job is to convince you to buy a Showtime rotisserie. And very quickly we pivoted to my job. Anthony's job was to help you understand something that you want, but you're not sure if you need, and to get you to the right place, and also help you navigate the things that are good and the things that are bad within our ecosystem. And I actually think it started as Ron Popeil, but it morphed into, I look at the body of work that I had, and I look at when we really did our best to, if we got a terrible product, and we got some terrible products, we'd call up Dainese or Icon or Alpine Stars and be like, this is crap. We're not going to carry it. But if we got something that was like a C-, we'd go on camera and I'd say, hey, listen, you know what? Alpine Stars, this should have been a leather palm. This Clarino is going to break down after 6 months. Like, shame on you. Next season, this needs to come out with a leather palm. And I think it morphed into more, I'd like to say, a trust agent or a trusted authority within the space that, did we do empirical studies with, did we do our own sharp testing and things like, no, but did we ride enough stuff and have a team of people that rode in it to where we could tell the difference between good stuff and bad stuff? I think that's kind of how we approached it. I know that was a little bit, that's probably longer than you were expecting, but it was, it definitely took on a life of its own.
Yeah, that was cool. But you also hosted the Love Connection too, right? Well, I think we have some photos of that. He had a celebrity motorcycle guest, and he had a couple of babes. There's 3 photos there you could put up. He had nice hair too.
So I shake my head, and it's funny, I'm wearing a hat today because, speaking of nice hair, I mean, I'm growing a mullet at this point. I haven't had a haircut since COVID-19. Many of us are in that boat. It was called This Love Connection. And I think we put ready. So Brandon Wise, who turned into a RevZilla host now. So Brandon does a mixture of ride reviews, product, and I think some cycle gear stuff. I think he's on RevZilla as well. He's definitely on the couch when they do the podcast. I think he was the only one that fit. I could be wrong. It could have been this guy, John Krause. But I think it was Brandon that wore, and if it's the same video I'm remembering, he had me doing like a Chuck Woolery with a wig on, and like at the end of it, I'm, what the F are we doing here? Like, is this really what we're doing today? And I remember the video crew, there was a wonderful young woman named Chrissy McDermott who also moved to LA to go make movies. And she was just like, she was production manager, and she's like, this is nuts. But here's the funny thing about that story. I think it was Brandon Wise. We said, go into the store, go put the Rossi race suit on, and come out wearing the Rossi race suit. So Dainese, right? And this is before. So Dainese was bought by a big company called InvestCorp. That, it's a big private equity company. And this is Lino Dainese after 40 years or whatever it was, 1972. This is 5-6 years ago. He sells the company. But back when we did this video, like, it was when Dainese would call us and be like, "Do you still have the Rossi race suit?" We're like, "Yeah." Like, you're the only one in America that's not a Dainese store that has a Rossi race suit. And we would go, "We know." And like, you better keep that thing like locked up, and you better not breathe on it. So when we put one of our guys in it and made him come out dressed as fake Valentino Rossi in a literal, like, I want to say that race suit was Estoril 2009, but it might for MotoGP, but I could be wrong. When he came out wearing that suit, I think I got an angry gram from the head of North America, this gentleman, Roberto, who's like, become an amazing friend. He's just a great guy who's no longer there. And he's like, "Did you really put somebody in the Rossi suit? Like, I'm going to get angry calls from Italy. What are you doing?" We just kind of went for it, right? Like, we were
so cool. It was so cool. And then you had those two babes come out with beards and everything, all dressed up.
Was it Spurgeon and Liam, or was it somebody else?
I couldn't recognize them. I don't know.
I don't know. Oh, no. It was High-Vis Brian. I don't know if it was Spurgeon. It might have been Spurgeon, but I know it was High-Vis Brian. Shout out to High-Vis Brian, one of my favorite teammates on RevZilla ever. But yeah, we had one of our core values at RevZilla was, and I actually, funny, this is the second time I'm going to say this in the last. So I'm having it ready. So I'm on a Skype, or I'm on a Zoom scrum for this cause that we're trying to do right now. Yesterday, it's the first all hands across the country scrum that we're going to do during the week. And I told everybody, I said, "Here's the deal." I made a joke. I said, one of my personal core values is 5% jokes. And I said, and if it's not 5% jokes, we're not having enough fun, and we're all working way too hard not to have 5% jokes. So that was early RevZilla. It was 5% jokes.
So
even if we joke.
When you talk about your body of work up there, how many videos did you do?
I think the ballpark is, it's something like 5,000 or 6,000 videos in 9 years.
And you became like a YouTube influencer or something, a YouTube ambassador or something. What did YouTube do for you? Give you some award?
So YouTube brought us out. That was actually really cool. My co-founder Matt and I went out to San Bruno, went to the campus in 2000. I want to say 11 or 12. I think I actually have that poster at our house. And they did a big campaign around, what was their tagline was very serious. YouTube means business. But they picked, it was us, it was NASCAR, it was Undercover Tourist, it was the barbecue guys, which we got to know. They're out of, I want to say, Baton Rouge. It might have been ModCloth, which went on to be bought by Walmart as part of the Story Mark Laurie type deal when they did Jet.com. But they brought us in and they said, "Hey, you're the ones that are using YouTube to engage your audience by telling stories and building unique content before everybody was supposed to do it." So yeah, that was it. It was cool to get that nod and get flown out to go do that.
Yeah, that's cool. So in terms of the culture, you seem to have kept up your motorcycling. You seem to like to do that. You went to Rawhide, right? And dumped your bike in the mud and the sand a lot of times. I think we have a photo of that too, Paul. Don't we have him getting off in the mud at Rawhide?
You have it. You do have it. Yeah, I went out to Rawhide, and I want to say it was, gosh, I remember that crew too. We have some great pictures. Jim Hyde was wonderful. Went to Rawhide. So I don't see Chris anymore. Are we still good?
I'm here.
My screen has changed. All right, I'm gonna keep rolling then. So we went out to Rawhide. I mean, that was my favorite part about being in the industry, to get invited to do these rides, which were like dream rides all over from Europe to Alaska to all over the United States, on road and off road. Rawhide was certainly a treat to go out and do that. We shot a video as part of that as well. But yeah, RevZilla was almost 10 years for me. It was 07 to 17. And I mean, it was just unbelievable, the amount of really unique riding experiences we got to do.
What about Indianapolis and the drama that surrounded canceled flights and rented vans?
So I just want to know how you know that story, because you've done some wonderful research, because that is a great story.
Me and Spurgeon have become buds. I love him. We had such a good time over there in Morocco together for 4 days. So the first day they broke us into different groups. I was in Spurgeon's group and a bunch of other testers and so on, and trying to hang on to their butts on some pretty high speed roads. And then the second day was off-road day. So they took these Tiger 900s and they put knobbies on them, and they split us into groups, advanced, intermediate, and beginning riders. And I'm kind of an old guy, and I'm not used to, when I ride off-road, I tend to go smaller, 500 or something, KTM 500 or something like that. So 900 is pretty big for me. I don't have that much experience riding a big bike off-road like you were trying to do at Ride. And so they announced the intermediate group. They announced the intermediate group, and there's just 3 of us, and Spurgeon's one of them. And so I go up to the leader and say, "You got this wrong. I'm an old guy. I need to be in the beginning group." And relative to the other riders, it's not that I'm a beginner rider, but these other guys are, the world motocross champions and everything else. And so he said, "No, you'll be fine. There's just a lot of sand in the beginning. Just put your weight on the pegs way back." Make sure you make the front end light by giving it the gas, and you'll be fine. So my heart was beating a little bit, and off we went, and I was fine. But at lunch, we had an opportunity to switch groups, and I said, "Yeah, I ought to be in the slower group. I'm going to fall at 120 kilometers an hour and shatter on these sharp rocks." And Spurgeon said, "No, you're coming in our group." And so I rode with them the rest of the day, and they had all the GoPros going all over the bikes, and turns out I wasn't the guy who crashed that day, but we got some good footage. In fact, Spurgeon did an amazing review of the Tiger 900 that just got put up on YouTube about a week ago. Really good job. So yeah, we became pretty good friends, and that's one of the stories he told about you.
Yeah. So the shortest version is we had I think 18 employees. I want to say it was September of late August, September. It was either 10 or 11, and we said we should take everybody and fly them out to Indy MotoGP. And we had, at that point, we grew pretty fast. So in 2000, it had to be 11. So we went from 6 million in revenue to about 18 million in revenue in 2011, which was like unbelievable. It almost killed us just to keep up with it. It was such a wonderful time in the company, and we had those early employees, and we said, "Let's take everybody." And there was a hurricane in Philadelphia, and they canceled all the flights. And that was and MotoGPs are 2:00 on Sunday, right? So our CFO, Dave Price, who was amazing, he's like employee number 11, started as accounting manager, and he just grew with us. He was just like this amazing, almost like 4th founder caliber guy. He's involved in the project I'm working on right now. He skipped the race. He went to budget rent a car. We rented 3 vans. We crammed everybody in. We had those. Remember back then it was called EVDO. It was like a USB stick with like really crappy like 14.4 modem speeds. Right? I'm dating myself. And they shared, all the customer service folks went in, or all the gear geeks went in one van, and then we took turns. It was 770 miles. It took us 11 hours to do it. And the entire inbound ticket queue for RevZilla of Gear Geek customer service was, by the time we got back to Philly, was clear. And to the credit of that early team, most of them at work the next morning at 9 a.m. ready to go for a Monday in September. They're the great stories, right? And I know you've done a couple companies. I mean, as much as I love motorcycling, and as much as that was like the wonderful, enjoyable sport hobby that like was the fabric of all of it, it was for me equally or even more enjoyable to go through the learning how to go from a founder maker into like a more mature, skilled leader of a company that built something that people loved. I mean, it's just like the joy in that, to talk to people and say, I really appreciate what you did, or what you and your team did, right? Appropriately so. And that's like the neat part, where you have this enduring thing that, you know, I always tell my wife, I'm like, I hope when I'm like 80, you look back and there's a RevZilla somewhere, something, right, that brand lives on, because like you give birth to it, you know, it's becomes these neat things that people love.
Yeah. So on that note, we got a question from Mike Botan in chat. What does Anthony look for in people to work with? Because like Spurgeon used to be a high school teacher, right?
Yeah. So we'll start at kind of like tactical, right? So half of RevZilla under my leadership, people would say it's all motorcycle enthusiasts, and I'd say about half it. If you touch a customer or you build content, you have to be a diehard rider. Like you have to get it walking in the door, or else how are you going to be authentic and able to be what the rider needs to produce something someone would love or that would help them? But then the other half of it was people, you know, as you grow a company, you need specialists. And sometimes the best person to run digital analytics, they might have been a fly fisherman, but they weren't, or a fisherwoman, but they weren't a motorcyclist. And we found that as we went, what we looked for were people that had to be, like, there were definitely folks in the company, and a lot of times it was a gear geek that came in, it was a rider, and we said, listen, have great attention to detail, be enthusiastic, have hustle, the things you can control, and we'll train you to do the rest. And then for the other side of the house, you'd have folks that maybe didn't ride, but we always looked for somebody that had hobbies. Because if you have a hobby, you understand why other people that have hobbies love their hobbies. So they said, listen, if you're going to be a head of analytics and you don't ride a motorcycle, that's okay. You probably need to go take a motorcycle safety course so you can understand the nuts and bolts of the types of things that our customers are doing, even at a base level. But you have to know why people, it's really funny. So I got a note from somebody who will remain nameless that when Ken Murphy, who's the current CEO of Komodo, which is J&P, Cycle Gear, and RevZilla, came in last July, somebody sent me a note and they said, wasn't that the guy that was the mattress guy? And I said, yeah. And they said, how do you feel about that? And I said, I feel like he's a really strong leader that has a lot of hobbies. And I feel like he's also the type of person that's going to wrap his head around motorcycle. And he's going to get why people love it, because he's got a lot of hobbies. And at this stage of the game, while you'd love to see somebody that's a diehard moto guy at the top of that food chain, what I'm okay with is that you have a really strong leader that gets specialty. So to bridge back to your point, what do I look for in people? You can never compromise on culture fit. You have to have your core values as a company, and they're the filter for who you'll even see. So that's binary. They're either a culture fit or they're not. And you better know what your culture is, because if you don't have that lens, you end up with a dog's breakfast. And then after that, you're looking for people, you know, the other lens, every hire as we went, my line used to be, and I probably stole this from Jeff Bezos, who I fear and admire at the same time. I think he's amazing and terrifying. It was every hire should raise the average. And you know what made me always feel great? I'd have people that were in senior positions at RevZilla that had been there 4 years, and they'd look at me and they go, I don't think I could get hired here anymore. If it was now, not then, I don't think you would have hired me. And to me, I always thought that was wonderful on a few levels, because you'd have somebody that was in a leadership position that realized that our job was to constantly like raise the bar around talent and expectation and people that really wanted to contribute something to where the whole was so much greater than some of the parts. So I think you get a sense for how I hired, but it was, I'll tell you who I didn't hire. My biggest lightning rod was the brilliant jerk. And you have somebody that says, listen, the seat, I've had the senior analyst position. It's been open for 6 months. This work's not getting done. And I got this guy or gal that we interviewed. They're kind of, I don't want to have a beer with them, but they can do the job. And I would say, but they can't hire them. And they'd say, why? I'm like, because when you hire the non-culture fit, the cost of the mishire is always 10 times higher than the opportunity cost of not having the butt in the seat tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's, you know, maybe if you're at wartime, maybe the rest of the businesses that are closed right now with COVID, you got to make some compromises. But if things are going smoothly and you start compromising on who you bring on the bus, you always pay 10x for it when you compromise who you are or if you know it's a maybe. Maybes always have to be no's. So I'll stop there. I could go on hiring for, I mean, that's like you're just like, you can get me to brain dump.
That's fascinating. So you gave the commencement speech at Drexel. And Paul, I think we have a photo of him all dressed in his finery with cap and gown on. He looked good. And during that speech, you said, if you're not scared, you're in the wrong place. You're doing the wrong thing. And I think you told a story about your wife saying, well, you make it look kind of easy with RevZilla, and you reacted that you were actually scared to death.
Yeah, and I stole that credit where credit's due. There's an old Mario Andretti line, right? If everything's under control, you're not going fast enough, I think is the line. And it's like, I always looked at my job, which was gas, and the CFO's job was brakes, right? And I always try to figure out, can I have two wheels outside the lines or off the edge? And my team's going to make sure that we're not going to fly off, right? But I think that's every time in a fast growing or changing business, or when you're in a role that you haven't done before, like nothing kills faster than success. So as soon as it's working, then you got to figure out actually how to stay ahead of it. So it was like every time, the other analogy I used to use is like it's like you're swimming in the pool, and as soon as you figure out how to do a backstroke in the deep end to keep from drowning, somebody blows a whistle and says, now you got to do a breaststroke, and you got to figure out how to not drown all over again. It's like you're in a different pool, right? So, I mean, my philosophy was like, I have a shred of paranoia, which I think for a CEO, I think is a healthy thing. I always looked at it as, you have this market opportunity. I think every opportunity has a life cycle, and everything has an arc. Sometimes that arc is a year, sometimes it's 10 years, sometimes it's 50. But you have to know, you have to move. I always said to my wife, I said, I never want to look back and feel like I left anything on the table. And if RevZilla for me personally isn't a happy ending because we get hit by a meteor, because you have a COVID that happens, if the industry changes or the brands all go direct to consumer were irrelevant, I never want to feel like I look back and said I didn't do all that I could to stay ahead of where I thought, or to at least try to figure out where the puck was going. And I know I'm mixing my metaphors here, but I think that's how I'm built. It's a bit of fear of failure, a bit of paranoia, and a bit of taking for granted what you're good at and just trying to figure out how to get better at the things you suck at. And I think my team responded to that. I think it gave them permission to admit that they didn't know things. And it also, as a company, we got a hell of a lot done in a short amount of time.
So what was your line about never underestimating people's ability to accept the truth or something like that? In your commencement address, you talked a lot about the various ways that you suck, your weaknesses. There must have been some soul searching to be able to do that.
So I wrote a book in the last year, about a year ago, and it's a book called Reboot by Jerry Kalana, who's like a famed startup guy, was a VC, and now he's basically like a CEO life coach. And he said it best in that book, because there's lots of leadership books out there, and I've read tons of them because I'm a total leadership geek. And they say a lot of the same things through a lot of through different words and different little isms, right? But Jerry's book said that his premise was to be a great leader. Everybody that starts out that's a doer says, well, what's the formula? And just show me what the formula is, and I'll check all the boxes, and I'll be a great leader. And I think what I learned along the way that Jerry captured in his book that I think you heard come out from me in the commencement address was when we started RevZilla, I was a 26-year-old single dummy. I was just immature. We were kids. Like, I look back at even how I managed people or the things you thought were okay, and you're like, you have a good idea, and I think you have a good intent, but sometimes you don't realize that at the end of the day, like, many of the problems of a company are actually the problems of the leader that haven't been unpacked or solved. So Jerry's line was, to be a great leader, you have to figure out how to be a great person. And to be a great person, you got to be really honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you're not good at. You got to be willing to have people put up the mirror, and you got to ask for feedback, because the only way you're going to figure out what your blind spots are by asking people to trust you enough that you'll respond constructively when they tell you what they believe are the challenges in working with you are. And I think the neatest part about my commencement speech was that it was 2016. It was about 9 years into RevZilla. I'd been you okay? You're not going to get mugged or anything. I saw you looking around.
I was looking at the light. I'm listening to the story. And I think it's fascinating, but I'm noticing how yellow my face is compared to yours because I'm in somebody's garage because my internet connection is crappy. I'm in Silicon Valley right next to Google, and we can't get a good internet connection here. So I came to somebody's garage, and I know, I see it. So, well, what I have is so what happened is they put the guys whose garage I'm in put blue gels over his lights in the background in order to make me pop from the background a little bit. But what's happening is my laptop is adjusting the white balance to the background, the blue, which is making my face look all orange. And I don't want to look orange. But I was listening. Yep. It's a fascinating story. Keep going.
And I'll go back to it. But listen, Judge, don't sell yourself short. You're a tremendous slouch. I think you look fine. So here's the bookend on a long story about a commencement speech. After 9 years of being totally head down and completely focused on what needed to be fixed next and never really taking a moment to look back at a body of work that mattered, that consumers loved, that created this wonderful company that I was so fortunate to have an opportunity to have helped build. They asked me to do the commencement at Drexel, and it was a 20-minute speech, and it took 25 hours to put together. And they did me, and I had no idea that less than a year later, I would no longer be the CEO of RevZilla. I didn't know I was going to leave then. I look at that, and they forced me to crystallize almost like everything I'd learned. They forced me to do that work and take that snapshot of this is how I see life, leadership, and business at this moment in time, which is 3 months after we had just been acquired and had a life-changing event. And honest to God, my joke, I've gotten to know the president of Drexel University. His name's John Fry. He's wonderful. And I always joke with John, I'm like, you did me such a favor to force me, like to give me the opportunity to speak, but to force me to take an inventory and crystallize that moment, which I never would have done. And then I also told him, I said, I really hope that, that was 16. I graduated in 04. I said, I really hope 12 years later you keep much better records, because what you don't know, obviously, is that I almost got kicked out of school when I was sophomore, and that I was on a first name basis with the head of public safety because my friends and I were such just dumb, immature 22-year-olds when we were in college. And he just laughed and he goes, well, thanks for coming to speak. And keep those stories to yourself. I need plausible deniability.
It was a great talk. I found it very inspirational. And it looked like you took a little bit of inspiration from my old boss and his commencement speech, Steve Jobs. So I used to work for Steve Jobs.
You worked for directly?
Yeah, for years. Or some years, 3, something like that. So I have stories to tell about that. In fact, I had to give a TED talk, and one of the things they wanted me to TEDx and they wanted me to talk about was a little bit of Steve Jobs' story and a little bit of my background. And it must have taken me 25 hours to prepare for an 18-minute talk. And same thing, same life experience. I'm trying to make sure we get some of these questions answered. Somebody's asking what the fastest growing motorcycle style in regards to equipment and gear is. That's RCR001 asked that.
Today?
Just now. Oh, well, they're asking. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, so, all right. Cool. So today, I still sit on RevZilla's board, and I still spend a fair amount of time talking to the team. But when you think about trends, I know the types of bikes that I'm interested in at this point, and we've seen the cafe movement. We've seen everything go scrambler. I mean, we certainly rode the ADV wave with all of you, where we didn't start as ADV riders, but got into it, and it was such a blast. But as far as the fastest segment today, I hope it's not electric bikes because they don't make any noise. It might be, but I'm not. I couldn't right now. Noise. I think the challenge. Oh, I love noise. Right? It's like, and I'm such a nerd. Right? I'm an Elon Musk fan, and he's nuts, and his book's amazing. And I don't own a Tesla, but I just think it's so neat. But I'm such a the thing I fall for first in a bike or a car is what is the sound that it makes, and do I feel it in my chest? So what we're all trying to figure out right now, I'll tell you this, we're trying to figure out the segment of motorcycling that somebody under 30 is going to care about in the United States. And that's not fair to the people watching this because you already do care. But it's this really interesting thing that's been happening for the last 15 years is where the average age of a motorcyclist is getting older, and there's an escapism and a romance and an adventure that goes to it, or goes with it. And I think bikes have gotten too expensive. And I think the technology arms race is happening, increase those costs. And I think that it's harder now to get financed if you're a young person. And I think that fastest growing segments are hopefully going to be the segments that people under 30 fall in love with. And I'm not sure exactly what has that macro traction. I'm not sure what is. I mean, I'm curious how you would respond to that based on you're probably closer to the trend lines of motorcycle on a day-to-day. I mean, after I left the CEO role of RevZilla, I follow what I like in motorcycle, but I'm no longer as focused on what is the flavor of the day or the macro trend or what is for this quarter, what changed in moto that is changing the entire conversation, unless it was something I was already interested in.
I guess I have a couple of answers, but they may be reflective of my own interest. Although I think I see this in other people too. Adventure bikes got huge, 1290s, and there's some really big bikes. And now they're getting more moderate size. What used to be big, like a KTM 790, is super popular. Yep. And now we're coming out with 390s that women can ride, and smaller, younger riders, and so on. I think it's just a much easier, safer way to get into motorcycling. It's a lot of fun. Those bikes are light, and so that's one thing. And also, sort of the retro bikes, like in No Time to Die, they show a Triumph 1200 Scrambler, and they entered that thing in the Mexico 1000, and the rider took 5th place in a 1200 Triumph Scrambler. They just look so badass, and the sound is so good, and it goes back to, and there's such a movement in custom bikes now and everything. So it reminds me of custom watches and things. But I don't know. Somebody asked, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's a theme for people under 30, right? So you appreciate custom things. I appreciate custom things. But I think that people that are a decade younger than me have been over-marketed their entire life. They've been overly marketed to. And if I was someone who was under 30, I might be dying for anything that's authentic or has, someone's real sweat in it, right? I just got to know so many of my staff at RevZilla, and they're looking for things that have a real story. And I think that's right now what that age group is looking for, things that are real and not manufactured.
I'm a little bit influenced because I live near San Francisco, and whenever I go in the city, there's a lot of hipsters riding around on more authentic looking bikes. It's not so much plastic and chrome anymore. It's just more authentic. So DG asks, Anthony, what's the story behind the purple t-shirt in all your review videos?
So it's really funny. And if you've seen any of my Instagram, I actually posted a picture of my passport from a decade ago that just expired. And I was actually wearing the RevZilla blue purple t-shirt, but it was a white one with the logo. So when we started, we had gray, we had this gunmetal gray, we had white, and we had blue. And the blue that fit me, which the audience can totally tear me apart now, if they didn't fit you, it was too tight. Fair. It was extra medium. That particular shirt, which I had like 30 of, that were manufactured and printed in 2009 or 10, that one faded and it turned purple, right? And it went bizarrely that like I was this guy with this business that has orange as the accent color and blue as like orange, and then it became electric blue. And you're like, well, why is the dude in the video wearing a blue/purple shirt? It's not even that blue anymore. And it was people used to joke, and it was really funny. Like they'd show up in the comments and be like, why does the guy turn his head to the left and have like some kind of seizure when he's introducing the video? Why is he yelling and jamming his work together? And why the hell does he not buy a new shirt? But it's really funny. In early videos, I think you can find me in a different shirt or two, but it's like anything. If it becomes part of the story and part of the brand and part of the fun, it's like, I know that guy. The shirt's too tight. It's kind of purple. He wears the same one in every video. He starts the same video every way. You know what people used to say? They'd be like, it's like I'm part of your inside joke. And to me, as a guy trying to build a brand with his team from nothing, I'm like, there's no bigger compliment that somebody could say than, I feel like I know you, and I feel like I really know you. And I'm part of the joke. And I'm like, oh my God, that means you've connected with us, and we're not a retailer. We're somebody that matters in your life. And like, that's all you could hope for if you're trying to do something that matters.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. So we have one final question, then I'll get off motorcycles. Do you have any plans to start a motorcycle business in your future?
So I'm still on the board of RevZilla Komodo. I still have a wonderful relationship with so many that are there, including the new CEO, who's awesome. I think that my focus right now, right, to not dilute my effort, I think that for me, it's doing everything I can to create support as Komodo and the brands continue to grow. And it's to ask questions like, okay, so that's awesome that in the last 24 months, we've blown up the entire Sedici line, which when we merged with Cycle Gear, I was not a fan of. And we've blown it up, and now we're rebuilding it. And I was like, if for value, if you can look a customer in the eye and say value for dollar, for $200, that's actually an amazing helmet. Might not be a $600 helmet, can't stand shoulder to shoulder with a Rye or Shoei, but for $200, that's actually an amazing helmet from a safety, from a comfort, from a quality standpoint. Then as a board member, I look at, I'm doing my job and I'm making sure that I'm asking hard questions that don't see us eroding. My job as a board member is to ask hard questions and participate in conversations that involve a strategic what. What should we do about, or what should success look like? And I think that right now, to the degree in which I'm still involved with Komodo, to the degree in which I'm trying to help to the best of their ability, everybody get it right as close as they can to write what should look like for the company, for the customers, to everyone involved. I think that probably precludes me from starting another motorcycle business because I feel like that's where my motorcycle focus goes and still goes.
And somebody was asking earlier in the chat, where's that compilation of the intros you did to many of your greatest hits? And I don't know, because I haven't seen it and you haven't seen it either. So somebody better post it on ADVRIDER or something so Anthony and I can go see it. So tell us, tell us about what you're doing with your charitable work and Save Philly Eats.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's funny, this is the first time you're technically the first media we're talking about the evolution of it. So I told the story in the beginning about my friend that had the restaurant that was literally crushed by, it's like so many small businesses right now, but restaurants specifically, to where they're typically thinly capitalized and now they're just shut and they can't generate revenue, right? So the thought process with Save Philly Eats, which is literally, I think it's, what's today? Today Monday or Tuesday? Today's Tuesday. I think it's 3 weeks old today, was can we create a localized, personalized site that focuses on special experiences within the Philadelphia food community so that customers that already love the restaurants and bars that they can no longer go to can go on and buy something directly from that restaurant and bar that they pay for now and they redeem later when they all open back up. And it was a really simple, we saw there's a company that's a POS system on the West Coast called Toast. And they're like a $5 billion company. And they were doing, they said, we have all these POSs in all these restaurants around the country. Buy a gift card and we'll donate $1 for every gift card sold to a relief fund for bar and restaurant and workers. And we looked at that and said, well, a staff relief fund is important. And $1 for gift card, probably, in my opinion, not to say anything negative about someone's good idea and good cause, we said that's probably not enough. You know as well as I do as operators, profitable revenue cures all, right? Yeah. Like, what do you? People say. A reporter asked me recently, like, "What's the big problem with Corona? How would you help this business to that business?" And I'd say, figure out a way to package what they're doing right now and monetize it in a way that's good for the consumer and good for the business. Because without profitable revenue, everything falls apart. And we started Save Philly Eats with 20 restaurants in Philadelphia, 12 of which were pretty noteworthy chefs that we either tangentially had access to or knew. And we launched and we said, we're going to help them try to generate some revenue. And what's happened is within the first 7 days, I think we did a few $100,000 in revenue. And again, we don't handle money. We're pass through. So that's what we think because we don't actually do the transaction. It goes right to them. There are no fees. There's no cost. And right now, currently, as we speak, we're a few days away from launching DC and Baltimore. Early next week, you should see LA, New York, and Minnesota come on. For anybody that's watching out there, right now, I need operators, I need doers that I can pair with a great chef in every other major city that we can donate our platform to, so they can stand it up and begin to help the restaurants in their ecosystem. So we've had to get some insurance and like do some things to try to create, an appropriate structure. But right now I have 5 teams, well, 6 if you include Philly, which I actually kind of am part of, but I have a great operations manager and a great marketing person. The bulk of us are donating our time. I have a few paid contractors for dev, design, and a little bit of marketing and a little bit of brand. And basically our goal is if we say COVID might last for another, this is going to be an unpopular thought, but I mean, it could be easily another couple months that the businesses are closed. I don't think that's unrealistic. It's my opinion. I said, okay, so if within a couple months of continued closures, we might be able to help the bars and restaurants of Philadelphia generate a couple $1 million of revenue across the things that they're offering and help connect those consumers with them. What if we blitz scale this into every other city? And what if we stand it up and as long as we can find an operator, and we know the chefs already because we have the chefs in Philly, and try to do $20 or $30 million in impact? It's like, could that be meaningful if you were in 20 or 25 cities very quickly all across the country? I think right now we're going to figure that out. It might not work. We might realize that part of Philly was that we were focused on one thing, but we're doing it in a very tech-like kind of way. And we're just trying to stand these up as fast as we can. So that's, we're calling it Save the Eats, and each city is going to be, right? So we're Save NYC Eats, Save Philly Eats, Save LA Eats. And we think that, I mean, the sacrifice, I don't want to call it sacrifice, but it's like the sacrifice my wife and kids are making is that my kids are like, you've been around a lot for the last few years. Why don't you come out of your office anymore? And I think I think we all have unique skills and unique resources. I think right now, it's easy to write a check for some of us. Like you can always write a check and donate to a worthy cause, right? Something. But I think if you also have the ability to leverage your skills and your expertise, I think that it creates more leverage. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. And I again, it's not about us. It's about, can we just be a helping hand that lends some support in a time where I think bars and restaurants are looking for any kind of help they can get.
So Paul, you may want to put up some of the screen grabs that I took of some of the press he's getting, and you did a video in a kitchen and so on. So on my way over here, I think it's great because a lot of people just want to know, what can I do? I want to be involved in something. I just want to sit at home. I want to do something where I can contribute safely. And when I was on my way over here, I was listening to the radio. It was Gavin Newsom's, he's our governor, press conference in California. And he had somebody by the name of Josh who got on, and they were introducing a new website that they just built. I haven't had a chance to look at it, where it's California for All or something like that. I don't even remember the domain. And it's a way for you to volunteer to do something like donate food, tutor, drive people places, take meals to places, things like that. You have your choice of doing something. If you're healthy, you can do something outside that would help people. If you're afraid of going outside, they have things you could do online in your home, and you just go up to the website and say, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I want to do. And what strikes me about what you're doing is it's an opportunity to mobilize the community where people are saying, damn, these restaurants, we can't let them die like this and file for unemployment and lay off it's just awful. So what can everybody has this question in their mind, what can I do? And so here you go. Sign up, go to Save Philly Eats. That's what it's called.
So if you go to Save Philly Eats, you'll see everything related to Philly, but there's a button up on the navigation that says other cities. And if you're in a city right now, and I think about cities that have, we're open to many cities, but like right now, this next wave that we're looking for is, it's Portland, Seattle, Nashville, Austin, Charleston, Charlotte, right? We're trying to figure out, like through our lens of saying we can only do so much. If somebody comes to us with, an Atlantic City and they're the real deal and they want to drive it, absolutely. We'll do our best to help them get it stood up. But for us right now, we're trying to figure out, how do you maximize social impact? How can we shoot? It's even funny. I had somebody on the Philly team say, we would have done more with Philly in the last couple of weeks if we almost didn't take our eye off the ball and try to make an impact in other places. On Reddit, right? So I'm a Redditor. Yeah, there's a whole category called ages like milk or age like milk. And that's like with COVID for restaurants, it all ages like milk. They're thinly capitalized, they're closed, they can't generate any revenue, they all have real fixed costs. So I was talking to an agent. Oh, sorry guys, I'm on the phone real quick. All right. So you want to come say hi? Come say hi. She's putting tape on my car. That's okay. I'll forgive her. Do me a favor. Scoot's good. I'll be out in a couple minutes. We're homeschooling, right?
Oh, so, we wanted to see him. They sound
Carm,
cute.
you want to come say hi? Carm, you want to come say hi? So, as I was saying,
I have 13 grandkids.
I didn't think my parents were going to have. They didn't think they were going to have 8 grandkids, but that happened too. It's nuts. That's wild. How many kids do you have?
4.
Oh, so you have 4. So I'm gonna, right. I'm gonna be right there with you. It's just gonna be like a team. But no, my point that I was gonna make is, if you go to our site and you click other cities, if you're serious about potentially learning more or really volunteering to take our technology and run with it in your town, our city, we'll entertain it. That's where we're at right now. It's been neat. I've done some work with the Tony Hawk Foundation, the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia. I think that we all have to be cognizant about what we can do to help with the resources that we all have, and we're all different, right? So I just think it's a time for. It's amazing to hear what you said about California, and man, I'd love to see that catch fire and take hold in every state, because that's what has to happen right now. People have to kind of, once they get oxygen on, the ones that they can get it on. It's like, all right, so I'm okay. What can I do? Yeah,
that's awesome. So hats off to you. I think we should end on that note. Thanks so much. I know you're running like mad, and this is quite a bit of time we carved out for you, or you carved out for us. For people who like this, make sure you like and subscribe. And next week on the live stream, we're going to have the CEO of Zero, and we're going to have to tell him he needs to make more noise with those bikes.
As soon as you said that, I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful." The trend that, right? Like, it's green, it's good, it's green, it's just not noisy enough for me. I really appreciate you. It's wonderful.
Off-road is pretty nice because, and they're really great. The Surons and so on. It's amazing how fast they are for little light bikes, and how powerful they are. It's just, off-road, when noise is such a hazard and the neighbors hate it and everything else, if you can quiet them down, it makes a big difference.
Makes a lot of sense. It's been wonderful to meet you. I've known, I first joined ADVRIDER in 2007. I knew you as Baldy. I knew you from Smug Mug. Like I said, I'm a nerd that over time got to know, who these, it's our industry is small and you see the same people. So it's amazing actually to me that it's taken this long to finally connect. But kudos to what you built and what you're doing. And I appreciate, we're all coming up with a new recipe for what we want to do and contribute in this time where everything is so out of whack. But it's really cool. I'll have to subscribe to this cast. But yeah, Chris, thanks. I had fun with you today.
Yeah, I did too. And I feel like we both bootstrapped companies without investors that we owned ourselves. And that's the way Smug Mug is. It's still independent. In fact, it acquired Flickr. So now the two are together. So
so you were co-founder, right?
Yeah, with my oldest son. I just helped my oldest son get going.
Running it?
He is, yeah. So I stayed there for 13 and a half years, and now he and my second son and third son, they're all there. My wife is there. She's the Countess of Cash, which means finance. So, yeah, it's really.
Are you ready? So I got to say this. I know we're wrapping up, but to any of you that are watching that want to start a business, skip every round of financing that you can, including all of them. Like, so we're anomalies. Most people, they say, well, I'm starting a company and it's a badge of courage. I will go raise money. Don't raise money. If you can do it, don't raise money. Don't ever.
Right here in the Silicon Valley, it's such an anomaly. Everybody raises money. So, all right. Thanks a lot. It's great. I'll send you a link to your compilation video once we get it.
Thanks for all the love, and thanks to the audience out there. I had a wonderful time being part of an active motorcycle ecosystem for so long. Now I'm arm's length, but it's still a blast to come back. See everybody.
Thank you.